I am Ray Dickey. We are here for access control. Here's what HOAs get wrong. And we're here for South Carolina, Hudson Valley, CAI, and Association Health, now covering several different states. If you are here for CEUs, everyone has a question feature. That's how you ask us questions. And that's how you send comments. I love them. I'd love to get them. You should feel free to ask whatever you like. I don't use anyone's names, so feel free to ask whatever you like. Maybe don't ask me anything too top secret in case I make a mistake. You want to use that feature now because you want to enter CEU. That lets me know if you're here for CEUs that I provide them to you. So thank you very much for being here today. Much appreciated. With that being said, we have an awesome panel today, and I'm going to start off with Tom first.
Good morning, and thanks for having me on, Ray. I appreciate it. Tom Landry, retired U.S. Secret Service agent, 25 years in the agency. I'm now a security consultant for Secure Environment Consultants based in Dallas, Texas. Glad to be here.
Oh, Tom, I forgot to tell you, I have a new feature. Since you've been on it several times, I feel comfortable now. It's going to be called Has Tom Ever? So don't let me forget about it. We'll run it. We'll run it. Tom's like, what the heck? I didn't sign up for that. Okay, John.
Yeah, I don't think he signed up for that.
Yeah.
John Legumina, the Legumina Law Firm. We're in Purchase, New York, just outside of New York City in Westchester. We represent condominiums, HOAs, and co-ops from New York City throughout the Hudson Valley areas.
All right, and Dawn.
Hi, I'm with Acrisure. We are international as well as national retail insurance agency. I am the practice leader for our East Division's Community Association Division. We provide insurance in this division for all types of communities, including condos and HOAs, coastal, inland, and ones with security and access problems as well.
Yeah, Dawn this morning sent me like 1,000 lawsuits related to this topic today, very quickly. You were able to put that together. Did you just do it today really quick, Dawn? Or?
Yes, right before the call.
Wow, there's a lot of them.
Which I think also speaks to how much is going on out there as far as litigation and cases that are arising due to injuries and property damage.
Okay, so what I want to try to get done today is Tom will be here the whole time, but I want to spend time with Tom and Dawn and John. Please stay. We're going to talk about the technical aspects of access, and then we'll go to legal and insurance, which I think there will be quite a bit. Really quick, John, I want to get this. I appreciate when people send me questions in advance. We could do this one really quick. Looking into dredging our pond, it's not on the reserve study, and it is not in our budget. Need to get the homeowner's approval prior to starting the project. Do they need to get the homeowner's approval?
You got to look at your governing documents, which is usually your declaration or your bylaws. If it's common area maintenance, it should not require homeowner approval. Because if you never get it and you don't maintain your pond, the place could have serious problems. So yeah, in general, almost every association can maintain the common areas without having a unit owner vote.
All right. And I appreciate the person that sent that in because we did not get to it during the last live stream. Dawn, several people are asking if they can get a copy of those lawsuits. Would that be something you could provide, or would that be?
Yeah. And, I hate to say it, but a lot of them are pretty easy just to put in Google and put, HOA lawsuits, security. That's a big one, and you can find a variety of ones that pop up. And I sent some on case law because we're going to go all the way back to 1986 in some of these examples.
Well, probably not today. We only have an hour. I'm sorry. I know you love insurance, and I know you would love to spend 5 hours talking about insurance lawsuits, but maybe we'll get to 2005 or something. We'll see. All right. Access control, where HOAs get it wrong. Tom, you could bounce around here, but I'm just starting off with, I thought this was a funny quote. The gate code is confidential, but it's written on every piece of delivery receipt in town.
Yeah, no question.
Let's start with that.
Yeah, I mean, so security is only as good as your process and procedures. A code that is 1, 2, 3, 4, or is circumvented by every person in the units to get their DoorDash or whatever it might be, you really don't have security when that's the case. And there's a real fine balance between convenience, right? You want your life to be convenient, and apparently no one wants to go out and get their own food anymore. But you want your food brought right to you. But how do you do that if you live inside of a gated community or some sort of community that has security process? I mean, ultimately, once you let that out, then do you really have access control, right? And then ultimately, you open yourself up to all kinds of issues. I work with a lot of different clients, from high net worth clients all the way up to HOA type facilities. And all of them have this problem. It is a real balancing act that I think, I'd love to see, coming from my background, I'd love to see the pendulum swing more towards security. But so many people will take the easy way out, and that reduces everyone's overall security. And again, I live in a gated community, and I don't have any. I have no idea that there's any security provided by that gate, because I know that my Amazon package makes it to my front door. So that means they know what that gate code is. So, what am I really doing?
Why, though, the technology exists for personal gate codes, fobs exist. Why is it money? Why are associations using one standard? Because they can give the Amazon driver his own gate code. Right? Can you run with that a little bit? Why aren't we seeing? First, explain what the technology is, and then explain why don't we see it everywhere?
So there's a lot of different ways to go about doing this, but you have unique gate codes that go to your residence or an individual. But then there could also be delivery codes, a generic code that all delivery individuals get, as opposed to giving you my personal code. There could be a delivery code. A lot of you could very easily set that up in your system, and then at least you understand who has that code. And then you also know it's not your personal code. Your personal code is safe. Obviously, lots of ways to balance that. I think a lot of times what you're seeing, though, is there's security theater, right? So people see it, they see the gate, they see either a camera, and maybe we'll touch on cameras here in a little bit. You see that, and so you get a warm, fuzzy feeling, right? Like a warm blanket. But the fact of the matter is, it's really not doing much for you from a security standpoint. I think I read somewhere that someone had said cameras, and I think in my previous times coming here, I'm relatively anti-camera. I'm not a big fan of cameras, because all that does is essentially record the crime in progress. It's great for the after action, but it doesn't really prevent crime or violence, which is really what we should be focused on, the prevention of these things. Just documenting it better afterwards, that doesn't do much for you, and at the end of the day, won't stop any events from happening.
I know the technology exists, though, Tom, where you can produce as many codes as you need, right? So if I was a resident and I want to give a code to a delivery guy, I can almost have like a separate code just for my delivery guy. What I like about that is then if there's something happens, they know what code that person entered on. How come we're not seeing more of that, though? Why are we still dealing with the standard 1, 2, 3, 4 gate code? Why are these all just personalized gate codes?
I think there's a little bit of I don't want to be too rough and too harsh, but laziness and the human factor come into play here a little bit, right? Your security and your security procedures are only as good as the people implementing them and holding everyone accountable for them. And accountability is a dirty word in 2026 in a lot of places. So ultimately, you're right. Having those unique codes will give you a lot better understanding of who is coming into your properties and who is responsible for those people being granted access into those properties. I think it's just trying to go the extra step, and a lot of individuals trying to understand their systems a little better. I think there's just a gap there between understanding and capabilities.
I love the responsibility part of it. I think that's a deterrent right there. People will do a better job guarding their code if they think the whole world's going to know that you let the burglar in on your code. A bunch of questions from the audience. I love it. When you get to it, what is known about RFID readers attached to vehicles instead of gate codes?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, there's the technology exists now and has for a while now. You can literally have an RFID chip on your car, and as you're pulling in, it will read the chip in your car and open up the gate, so you don't have to do anything. It's just automatic, and so that technology exists. It's around. Ultimately, it's not foolproof, right? There's ways to circumvent that from a security standpoint, but ultimately, it's more technical and lower probability, frankly. But yes, that exists out there, and so some communities, if they wish to have a no-touch experience, that exists out there. It's there today.
I think it's really common. I mean, we have it at our building, and it really cut back on a lot of non-security related issues. It popped out of my mind. What's the company doing where people rent their units out online they're not supposed to. We talk about it all the time.
Airbnb,
Airbnb and things like that. It really created an issue where there's some responsibility with the code.
Sure.
But
And to that point too, to go another level is, if you have key fobs or dongles or whatever the phrase is that people will use just to, like a chip reader, you can give that to anybody, right? And so, just because I assigned you this fob, that doesn't mean you're not going to rent it out and hand it out to individuals that, do they really belong there or not? And that's the question.
Yeah, but if I give John my key fob and I'm in AC and he goes out and drinks all night and gets loaded and he stumbles back into my building and he uses my key fob and he creates an incident, they're going to know that John used my key fob, right, Tom?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it can be, it will come right back to you, and they have a unique code on each of those fobs and dongles or whatever it might be. And so that's not the point, but we do know that who caused the problem. But again, we want to focus on less problems, not responding faster to them.
Go ahead, Dawn.
I just wanted to mention one of the largest lawsuits that I personally have seen in a condo association dealt specifically with this issue. It was a domestic incident between a woman and her boyfriend, and the boyfriend had the key fob. The community association paid out $900,000 for that claim. And as Tom was pointing out, the perception of safety is what really promulgated the case being the award being so much larger than it should have been.
Did that go to trial, or was that a settlement?
It went through court and they wound up with a settlement.
Let's make sure we get to that for sure, because that's a big part of this, the perception of safety and how it can come back to haunt you. I always tell my folks, just as the gates don't keep you securely in, they don't keep people securely out either. Yeah. Someone is asking, do you think that is more secure? I think they're probably responding to the RFID reader comment that we were talking about. What do you like for gate access, Tom? A lot of our viewers have gated communities. What do you like to see? Do you like to see a code? Do you like to see a fob? Do you like to see an RFD reader? And even facial recognition they have?
Facial recognition is out there. That's a little more expensive and pricey, and I think it can be a little persnickety, the usage of it and what I've seen. I like the RFID chips. I do like that. But no matter which approach you take, it's important that you be able to shut off these accesses. So when my car gets stolen, right, then the the chip reader in the car then can't be used then to go and get in there. That's why we don't like the remotes, the clickers, to use the phrase, because very easily stolen, very easily taken, very easily copied. So those, we want to avoid those at all costs. You don't want to leave it in your vehicle, the way to get into your development, because the vehicles are so unsafe, frankly. I mean, you can break into them, you can steal them. They're very bad. So I go with the RFI. If I have my choice, I like the chip better. That's the best option.
Is a fob and RFI? It's the same thing, right?
It's
fob,
yeah.
Like for my car, it's you don't even see it. It's a little thing that posts on the windshield. Is that? I don't even know what that is. Tom, is that an RFID, or is that a code a machine reads and then I have the fobs?
There's two different ways to do it. There's the RFID that actually will send a signal out and it'll be received and then open. And then there's another way you can have just a fob, and you can just swipe it and it will open the gate. And that's one it's not as good. We prefer the one that's the RFID in the window or in the actual car itself.
And then Tom, I think we have to talk a little bit too, if you don't mind. Like I live in Atlantic City. It's an intercity environment, so our security would be much more extreme than a gated community out in the middle of the woods somewhere, right? Because we have homeless people that. Sure. We have a gate that actually comes down in our garage, and it's been very effective from letting homeless people piggyback into our garage and camp out for a few days. Can you talk a little bit about the different levels of security based on where you are? And maybe I'm wrong to say that. Maybe you're going to tell me, you know what, security should be the same everywhere. Don't assume.
Listen, there should be different varieties of security depending on your risks. It would be foolish not to if you do one size fits all. I mentioned earlier about the RFID opening up the gates automatically, and that's great. But remember, those gates stay open, and as you drive away, I could very easily walk right through those gates if it stays open for too long. And so you have to understand where you're at, what are the potential risks involved. Where I live out in remote Texas, it's much different than where you live in Atlantic City. And so the gates that roll down, as you mentioned, right, very effective because those gates aren't open very long, right? So you go through and it closes rather quickly. Because you don't want to open up a hole in the security for everybody, not just yourself.
Yeah, we actually have a drop-down gate, a rail or whatever you call it, and then the actual garage that opens is up the ramp. So you can't even make it theoretically, but it's only as good as the people watching the front, the desk, the cameras also at the same time.
And if I could really just hit that point again, is that everything we're talking about, no matter what, whether, regardless of what you use, when people move out or when things are stolen, it's very important to be prompt to shut off access to, whether it be key fobs or whether it be remote controls or whatever it might be. You need a way to make sure, because it's, things get lost, they get stolen, they get, as Donna mentioned, there's domestic issues where, property gets moved around. You need to have the ability, the HOA has to have the ability to quickly turn that off when they're notified that something's wrong.
And these are basic systems, right, Tom? They're not that expensive to have, right?
They're not, and certainly, this technology has been around for a while. These are very user-friendly. Most administrators can do things remotely on their phone to turn off access. So it is very usable, and I would encourage your audience, if they haven't explored some of these technologies, to give it a look, because they can make their life a lot easier and safer.
I think the gate code thing is like dead in the water at some point here, where you punch in the code. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But John, a reminder, somebody's asking about like the boyfriend girlfriend thing. So can you remind me to go back to that when we go back to you a little bit later?
You got it.
And then also people saying that, they're very frustrated with the codes. They don't like the codes. Somebody is saying they use barcodes. Tom, go through the different kinds of security from the cheapest to the most expensive. I guess is it going to be the same for, I guess you could just go through it all. It doesn't really matter if it's a high security or not security, because I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, it's all, so the cheapest will be your traditional gate code itself, right? So that's just a static gate, and it has static code that you're given that probably never changes. Everyone has the same code. That's the cheapest, right? And ultimately it's if they don't keep the database of codes updated, it's almost assuredly going to be a speed bump on the way of people getting into your properties, if nothing else. So you get what you pay for there. It visually looks like a deterrent, but in actuality, it doesn't really work that well. And I think most of your audience is mentioning that, right? Then the next step, we're going to assume that you're not going to have a human being there, right? Or should I think about that?
Why don't we leave the human beings part out of it? Because I think that's more security. So let's assume for the most, obviously, if you have a guard there, it's going to work a lot better than just about anything, I guess. But why don't we?
You would hope so, but that's not always the case either. But the next step is you have a key fob of some sort. So it's not a code, but in essence, the fob is the code, right? So then the issues with that, of course, are just like with everything else: is if it's lost, if it's stolen. Whoever has the fob has access, right? And that may or may not be the person you want it to be. And so that's the next level. Then after that, there are barcodes that can be RFID codes that can be put on like a sticker, like we used to have them in the Secret Service. We would have them to get access to certain buildings that had an RFID reader that would read the barcode, and it would basically work really well. That's a little more expensive, and it requires it to be set up really just so. It's kind of finicky, but yes, it works very well. And so there's a number of ways. And then above that, even you can have facial recognition. You can have, now we're talking high-end buildings, either digital thumbprints or retinal scans and things like that. That's probably a little not in the residential area. It's a little, and very, very ultra high net worth type things that frankly are a little kind of James Bondy for my tastes. I mean, they're a little it's a little much, but they're effective, but they're expensive.
They're using them down in Miami. I go to Miami. They're already using facial recognition at some of these high-rise condominium buildings.
Miami is the hotbed for high-rise security now, and the city of Miami itself is a hotbed for all this modern technology and high-rise living. As you're seeing, people are going vertical, and we were talking before the show started that is the way. It's not the compound anymore; it's the high-rise, and that's the best security you can get.
Let me ask you something. I'm getting off topic, but I want to ask you. If John and I wanted to try to sneak into places and get paid for it, but we don't and not get in trouble, and we would get paid to sneak into places, could you set that up? Because you have a lot of connections. John and I would like to do that.
There are companies that do this. They do red team testing. That's for sure. Yeah.
I think John and I could get in. Look at us.
Yeah. No one would suspect us.
I have a whole plan. Tom, if you set that up, that would be great. All right.
I'm on.
I don't want to take Dawn along because she's too likable. Everybody remembers her. It would not. Dawn, people are asking am I going to get an insurance discount for putting in some of these security systems?
So I really like what Tom said earlier about security cameras and that he didn't like them, because as much as our insurance carriers do like them in some regards, especially if there's an unattended site, they prefer it there. But it really is best results for what occurred to determine and quarterback, right? It doesn't stop the crime. So a lot of the attorneys' opinions after we've had incidents occur at our communities have been that the security cameras that actually resulted in larger payouts. And again, it's that perception of safety. And sometimes the cameras aren't even working. They're not backed up. So there's that, then are you negligent in not taking the steps to maintain your equipment?
You're getting so far ahead of me. You get so excited about the insurance. Is there a discount? No discount, right?
No, but sometimes a requirement depending. But before we get into this, I'd really like to have, we're talking about biometric data, and that's becoming a thing. And a lot of our insurance policies exclude it. Are you going to have a topic about that in a little bit?
Yes. Slow down. There's so much legal and insurance. You're so excited. That's why you're so great at insurance, because you know so much. You know so much. Tom, and I'm not surprised this came up. People are asking me, license plate readers. They're also getting a lot more inexpensive, and ungated communities are looking to put them in. We're going to the legal and the insurance aspects, but what are the technical aspects of these things?
Yeah. So from a technical aspect, I have had several communities install these now, working with third-party vendors. And essentially what that does is it provides, does everyone understand what a license plate reader, should I explain?
Explain it.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. So essentially it's a technical system that will capture all the license plates of vehicles that come within a certain area. And a lot of times HOAs and communities that have one singular road going into their development that's ideal, right? They'll set up an LPR, license plate reader, to capture who's coming in and who's coming out, with the thought that people that will be doing burglaries or home invasions will be doing pre-incident or pre-attack surveillance and behavior, which is historically is a truism. There's some truth to that. There's casing the joint, if you're watching the old movies. But that happens in violent crime too. There is always pre-attack behavior, or usually pre-attack behavior that happens. And so that the concept is, if you're capturing these, then you can see who's not supposed to be in the neighborhood, right? There's usually a list of license plates of owners in the development, and then they cross-reference, and the technology will spit out those that are not registered into the community. And then theoretically, someone that could then go through and look and see, hey, what's going on? The number one, the gathering of data itself, it's a little big brother for me, to be honest with you. And coming from Big Brother, it's a little big brother for me. But it also implies that someone who understands what's going on is going to be taking that data and doing something with it, right? Again, the LPR is, oh, great, something happened. Now we're piecing it together again afterwards. And this will help me identify who this could be, the perpetrator. You didn't stop any crime from happening. All you're doing is helping us capture the person afterwards, theoretically. So again, I really like to put all of our limited resources and time in how do we prevent fires from happening, as opposed to how do we respond to them faster. So it's a long-winded way of saying, hey, it's a great piece of technology, but I'm not so sure if it's stopping any crime.
You know what I see in the future, though, Tom? I see license plate readers that are tied into the police department or something. So there's a known vehicle that's causing burglaries, right? And you have it in your community, and then the cops could get ahead of that. I also see technology AI being smart enough. Hey, this car is driven by 10 times. That's not normal, right? So I see AI in the future taking an abnormal. Why is this car driven by 10 times in an hour? And maybe it throws a warning out there. Don't you see that as with the future definitely happening?
Future as in currently now happening in some jurisdictions, and maybe weeks or months away. So the short answer is yes, that's not future state, that's really current state. I know there are some areas that they allow the local law enforcement to look in and actually capture LPR data. So yes, if there was a license plate of a vehicle that was stolen and it comes up through my HOA and we have an agreement with the local police, then they would get notified that that's there. So, so yes, you're right on the money that happens.
I like it too, because let's say John drives by 50 times in his Rolls Royce, right? John has a lot of expensive vehicles. Tom, John's very wealthy. He's unbelievable, generationally wealthy. And
Wonderful.
maybe he's driving around in his Rolls Royce a lot because he does that. And I like it because the technology would give a warning and say, hey, this guy's driven by 50 times. Or if there's a problem, we can go back and track down John. And I think it's great technology in that way if you can live with the Big Brother routine.
Yeah.
So.
And it can be used well, and it can be done. I know there's a lot of communities that are jumping on this, and there's some pluses as long as you manage it well.
Okay. We have a license plate reader for homeowner or resident speeding through stop signs in the community. We get the data from the annual census. You know, somebody's mentioned these flock cameras. Is it going to, can you do it a little, what is going on? Why? I don't understand. What is going on with these flock cameras? Why do I keep hearing about it? Is this something that's going to take too long for you to explain, Tom? Are you familiar with it? Why do I keep hearing this in the news? What's this about?
I'm only slightly familiar. Maybe some of your audience are a little more with it, but it's the same principles that we're talking about. I believe Flock is a private company that offers these to HOAs. So I think Flock is a company name, not a type of camera. But I could be wrong. So
Let's go to Dawn, because in Dawn's job, she has to know everything.
Yeah.
Well, just as Tom pointed out, that is the name of the company, but it is essentially a company that has been contracting directly with municipalities and cities to install camera systems on every major roadway. So I'm outside of Charlotte, and not only is your vehicle being read, but they're also doing biometrics to capture your face. And so what they're doing is they're matching your face with warrants. And so if the police officer gets the notice that you're in the area driving down the street, they will pull you over and arrest you. And so that's been concerning to a lot of citizens. My understanding is really it's been promoted on safety, but then there's the concern of the data collection.
Tom, maybe fill the audience in how good this facial recognition, and I don't think people understand. You're already having, like Dawn just said, I hate to tell you something, you're already having facial recognition when you go places. You're already having plate readers. You go to Manhattan, you drive in the parking garage, I guarantee there's probably a plate reader keeping track how many cars went in and what they're tied to, the online account. Tom, let people talk a little bit how we're already there. We're already at Big Brother stage.
There's no question that if we're not, I think we are there. I think you're right on the money there, but I think that it's only getting more and more ubiquitous. It's everywhere. I mean, anyone stepped on a flight recently, what does TSA ask you to do before you hand them your ID? You've proven who you are, right? You've demonstrated who you are. What do they ask you to do? Hey, can you please look in the camera and we'll take a photo of you, right? Well, why? Why would they need a photo of me if they have a government issued ID picture? And where does all these photos go, right? And they're going somewhere. And so I don't want to be like too big brotherly, but those photos and that biometrics are already well out there. I mean, you can't go anywhere and not be captured.
TSA is touchless now, Tom. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
Oh, I haven't. It's good. Yeah, I haven't. Yep.
Yeah. You don't even just see a person anymore. You just go up to the machine and it lets you through. The police have asked to see our license plate reader due to an incident that occurred in the community. John and Dawn, if you could remember about that, that's going to be a legal and insurance commentary. Of course, there's red light cameras all over the place. And we just got rid of all our toll booths. We don't have any. It just reads your license plate and sends you a bill to the license plate. What other technology is there, Tom, that we haven't spoken about that would be advantageous for HOAs and condominiums? And I'm going to have a follow-up question I'll give to you right now. What is the excuse going to be down the road for an HOA or condo not to have this? Because it's not going to be expensive.
Well, everything we've talked about up to this point on some variety, right? Your organizations need to have at least one of these, right? But I think, and I don't want to get into the legal or insurance questions here, but I think the biggest gaps that I see, it's not necessarily, hey, why don't you have this fancy new piece of technology? It's why aren't you using the technology that you have correctly and in the way it was designed to be used? So the gaps, I say the say-do gap, right? Well, we say we have gate security here at this, HOA or this location, but in actuality, what actually happens here, there really isn't any security. And that gap right there, again, I don't want to get into the legal issues here or the audit issues, but when you say one thing and you do another, that's where bad things can happen.
Okay. So any other technology you want to mention before if you're going to stay with us before we jump into the legal
Yeah,
insurance, because there's a lot to talk about. I think people are going to
yeah,
be surprised with a lot of the
yeah,
stuff that Dawn and John are going to throw up there. Did we cover just about right
yeah,
now?
yeah. And
And
there are some places that I know that still use the actual an actual lock and key, like an old school key.
yeah.
And we haven't talked about that because I wouldn't call that technology. So,
Okay. And then we're not at drones yet, though, at least, right? I mean, for the
uh,
most part, we're not, we
yeah,
don't have drones flying around tracking
we're
people.
getting there in certain areas, but I think we're not quite ready for the drone wars.
Okay. What I would like to do is I would like to start a new segment when Tom's with us. And Dawn and John, you're going to play along, and it's going to be, Has Tom ever? And there's 4 items. Don't worry, Tom, they're not that
Okay.
personal.
All right.
Dawn and John, you're going to go thumbs up that he has or thumbs
All right.
down that he has not. Okay. So let's go through it. And the first one is, has Tom ever wore dark glass? Tom was a Secret Service agent. Everybody remembered he was doing FBI stuff. Tom's like a secret agent kind of guy, if you ever read his bio. With that being said, has Tom ever wore his dark sunglasses at dusk when he didn't need to? Tom, do you wear them as Secret Service, but you don't really need to wear them?
Always, always, unless it's dark, right? Yes, yeah.
Why? Just to be cool? Be honest.
If it helps, then I'll do it. If it helped, I did it. Right? Yeah.
Has Tom ever defended the White House against impossible odds? We see these all the time, these movies. Oh, Tom has. Tom, have you? Or is it a secret?
No, no impossible odds.
All right, there's only 2 more. Has Tom ever argued with another country's security? I saw recently there was an incident with China security and our Secret Service agents, and they were like arguing. Tom, both thumbs up. Tom, has that happened?
This is an easy one. Yeah, that's an easy one. Yeah. So yeah, it's you probably half a dozen different countries, that are. Sometimes it got so difficult that we were literally pushing each other off the elevators and pushing each other to get to the right spot. And it's really, looking back, it was kind of petty, but ultimately it's important.
That must be nerve-wracking for you, though, Tom, right? Because what do you call it? Your protectee is
Yeah.
going off, and you have this sense. It must be very nerve-wracking when you're in another country because you don't have the control over the circumstances like you do
No
in the
question.
US.
We certainly
Yeah.
have a lot less, that's for sure. So we're really at the mercy of a lot of these countries, and some of them I'm not into politics, but some of them we don't have great relationships with, and they like to exert control wherever they can. And it's difficult to push the USA around. So where they can, sometimes some countries do try.
That's terrible because we could do the same for their people.
We could, but we don't. We largely treat our compatriots better than we ever get treated.
All right, and here's the last question for Tom. Tom, have you ever had a pop star fall in love with you? Have you ever had a pop star fall in love with you?
Yeah. My wife is a physician. She's not a pop star, so
Did you ever carry a pop star? Like something happened and then you had to carry the pop star out of the way and she fell in love with you. And were you ever in a pop star's like pool house and then at night they came over and knocked on the door because they were so attracted to you because you're such a Secret Service star?
Unfortunately not. That's and if it did, I'm going to save it for the memoir. So I'm going to save it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Did you hear the music? I didn't know. I worked.
I did. Oh, we all heard it.
Okay. Let's get back to work. All right. John, if you don't mind, I'm going to let Dawn go because she has so much info and she's so excited. That's why Dawn's a great insurance person. You want good insurance coverage? Call Dawn. Dawn, I'm just going to let you go right to it. What do you want to start with first?
Okay, well, I do want to make mention about some discrimination claims that we have seen in condo associations where there are religious exemptions that must be made not to use electronics. For example, there are some religious observance of the Sabbath that require that they not use electronic items or digital items. So the elevator, using key fobs are not allowed. So some of our communities have to be very careful if there's religious exemptions that need to be adhered to. Those accommodations, if the owner makes requests, you certainly need to discuss that with general counsel and make sure that you're following through, because we do see large payouts on those claims. The other aspect
Hold
is
on,
that,
wait. That is so interesting. And I want to go to John really before you go to the thing. So I understand, like at my building, we have an accommodation where we leave our lights on because because of a religious comment. It's easy to do. Who cares, right? So, and people take the stairs because they don't want to use the elevator. What I heard you saying, this can tie into not using security systems, Dawn. Is that what you're saying? Because this seems to impact the whole community instead of providing an accommodation. Is that what I'm hearing? And these are turning into lawsuits?
correct.
Okay, John, that seems like an interesting one right there.
Yeah, I mean, so you do have, I know New York has they don't just have Fair Housing Act statutes, they have anti-discrimination statutes. So this, your religion would be a protected class, entitling you to a reasonable accommodation. Just what that is, like if you have key fobs, then, and your religion prohibited you from using them, you have to come up with a different way to allow access. I definitely could see it leading to lawsuits. And Dawn makes a good point. These lawsuits usually end up, the associations end up on the losing side. So you don't want to even be a defendant in that lawsuit.
So I'm thinking of an example. Tell me if this is right. I needed accommodation. I don't want to use electronics on the weekend or something. So I'm given a key instead of using my fob. John, would that be a good example?
Yeah. So the issues it's case specific. They're reasonable. What's reasonable? Is it an undue burden to the community? So like if you have to spend $1,000 on a new set of keys for everyone, that's not going to be unduly burdensome. Unduly burdensome would be like you have to spend $500,000 to retrofit something. So yeah, so it's a balancing act, and it depends on the association. And the most important advice I give my clients is you have to engage in a interactive dialogue to try to come up with a solution.
My non-legal advice would be call your attorney. Don't get involved in this one. Okay, Tom, see how interesting Dawn is? I'm not kidding you. Like I joke around. Dawn is very interesting. All right, Dawn, hit us with another one. I like this.
Well, we got into a lot of data and talking about collecting that data. Most of our general liability policies will have personal and advertising liability. We have premises liability. So the premises liability is when something happens on your premise and you're sued. But let's just talk about the data collection. Most all insurance policies exclude any type of claim where you have collected someone's information and that information has gotten out. We talk about that with respect to cyber insurance. And cyber insurance is really the only policy that's going to protect you with all of this biometric type of information, the facial recognition, the license plate reading. All of that, again, is a cyber claim. And we talk about this all the time on these sessions, but I can't stress this enough. The suits we're seeing in different states, they will actually penalize an association for every time it occurs. So for example, if you have a penalty, if you're in a state that does have protections, and there's about 10 of them right now, New Jersey, New York, for example, if you cause that violation, that could be $5,000 for every car, every person that walks through your community. So you have to be very careful and know what those laws are. And John, I'm sure, comes across this quite a bit.
Hold on a second, John. Tom, I'm going to go to John here in a second, but I'm thinking like if you have the facial recognition system, maybe don't have it tied in with people's credit card information or people's social security number. Before I go to John, is there a way to separate some of these security systems from other data?
Yes, certainly you want to protect and segregate that data as much as possible to not only minimize the breach impact when it or if something gets breached, but also the level of damage that can be done by each piece of information, right? So obviously credit card data is different than license plate data, and each of them have a different impact on the consumer.
John, two things, commentary on that, but also if you could push it a little further in regard to people subpoenaing this information, right? Using this information, your coming and goings in a way that could possibly cause damages too. I think you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so I think of it like just having a videotape system. You who's going to look at it? what protocols you have in place to keep it confidential. So the legal issue is privacy rights. So you have to protect these privacy rights. Now, with all these access controls, electronic information, you're acquiring potentially confidential information that could jeopardize privacy rights. So there has to be so you're actually exposing the community to potential lawsuits for that, and that's what Dawn's referring to. And yeah, it's a problem. I mean, I'll give you a kind of a silly example, but I had a client once that had to defend a lawsuit because the issue was, where did this person live? Because non-residents didn't have the right to use the tennis courts. So they said, well, we know this guy lives outside of the premises. So I said, all right, let me just confirm. I got a copy of the guy's deed. Deeds are public record. And this guy went to court and said, because we found his deed, he had to go buy LifeLock. And he's been damaged, which it was a joke of a
Right.
claim, because these are public records, but you can see where I'm going.
Yep. It's public information. You have to protect it to different degrees, and you need to check.
So even something as silly as that, like, you should have a protocol for keeping information that might be considered confidential. You know,
all right.
Security committee can only look at this, for example.
Really quick, Tom, and I'm going to go right to you, Dawn, for another one here. How long do you recommend for people is there a standard industry average? Dawn may even know this too, for information to be held on to, right? In a security, you want it there long enough so you could fall back on it. But is there an industry standard for how long to keep it?
Are you referring to maybe like tax documents and things like
No,
that?
I'm talking about comings and goings, entry logs, facial recognition. You were at the pool, videos, things like that.
30 days is probably sufficient. Ultimately, any longer than that, not only are you going to run into a storage problem, but you're also going to run into a volume problem, right? But within 30 days, if a crime has happened, that's usually sufficient to be able to recognize a crime has occurred and then to have it there. But whatever it is, you want to just be consistent. So if you say you have 30 days worth of data and you start deleting it after 2, that's a problem.
Okay. Dawn, what else you got?
Well, I really like what Tom just said, and I want to talk about this real quick about the length of time that we keep our data. And each state is going to vary. And John can speak about how long New York requires you carry documents. And for that, oftentimes 30 days might be good enough to keep the data, but I can tell you, we will get a lawsuit that is filed 2 days before the statute of limitations, which might be 2 years, might be 3 years. And the first question someone will ask is, hey, do you have any security footage? And someone will say, sure, but it's been rewritten, so it's useless. So again, as Tom's point is, if you're going to have that, keep up with it and maintain to what you state you will do. If it's 30 days, 30 days, 60 days, 60 days. If you can do longer, that's always preferable. Now, I think the other cases that I'd like to talk about are more of the perception of safety. And I have a question for you guys. And can I get into security guards real quick?
Yeah, but please don't get me sidetracked, because we're not really here about security guards.
Okay.
I know where you're going. Just stick with the perception of safety, if you don't mind, please, with the cameras and stuff.
Perception of safety, one of the largest awards. Champlain Towers, we know, is about a condominium collapsing. But I think a lot of people would be shocked to know, and this is one of my general trivia questions, the largest settlement, over $500 million in that claim. It wasn't any of the people you think, it was the security company. Why? Because they didn't react fast enough. So what I want to impress upon everybody right now is contracts. Have a very good contract in place that limits the liability to the association and transfers the risk to that third party. But the hiring practices, the training of those who are involved, what are the emergency protocols? I know Tom spends a lot of time doing site assessments to determine how they work together. But if we don't start really at the contract point, we can be in a really big mess financially.
So, John, let me hit you with a few things, and I'll circle back to Tom here. As far as how long to hold on to the footage, why would an association want to hold on to the footage for 2 years? It seems like they'd be just doing themselves a favor by just deleting it at whatever the industry standard is, right?
Yeah, exactly. I know in New York, what Tom said is usually the case, 30 days. 30 to 90s is actually, it doesn't apply to HOAs and condos, but co-ops. So landlords, it's actually has to be destroyed within 90 days, or destroyed, or there's another word, it's hard to say, anonymized, make
All right.
anonymous.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example of a perception of safety. I think it's a good example. You tell me if I'm wrong. Here at our building, I know all our cameras are monitored, right? But I know there's other buildings here on the boardwalk, and there's a sign that says, "We're watching you, cameras in place." Heaven forbid I get assaulted, right? Right under the camera, but it's a fake camera, right? It's there as a deterrent. It's not really there. I get dragged into the corner. Somebody steals my, my candy bar or my sandwich or whatever I'm running around with that day. That's a problem, John.
Oh yeah. See, you're exposing yourself to potential liability for giving a false impression of security cameras. So that's a definitely bad thing to do.
Tom, I'm going to go to Dawn next, but I see this as a widespread problem in so many different ways.
Yeah, I see this often when there is a security guard, there is a human being, but there are more cameras than one human being could possibly monitor at one time. And so the perception is, hey, we have actively monitored cameras is a phrase I'll hear. And then when you really dig down into it, like, what does that really mean? That's really one person for 20 cameras that are also checking people in, that are also, they're also, so are you really monitoring those cameras? In reality, the answer is no, and that's a gap there.
I know in Atlantic City, they have a camera system that is very, very large. But you know what? I heard there's like 2 guys who watch it from some of the cops told me, and they're retired guys that they hire. It's a great job. And it's not there, but it's really good for after, like you said, Tom. I really don't have much confidence in somebody spotting me having a problem.
Yeah.
Dawn, you brought this up. I mean, you're still going to be kind of covered with your insurance, but man, you don't want to mess this up, right? I also think it's wrong to have people feel safe when they're not.
Yeah, I tell a lot of our boards, please don't act outside of the scope of your authority. You're a board member to protect the assets of the community, but speeding, I heard earlier someone talking about speeding and having speed monitors in the community. Guys, I mean, are you law enforcement? What are you doing with this information? That's the other aspect. You're collecting that information about how many people speed or how many people enter, but what is the information for? So that's something we have to think about, because our directors and officers liability isn't going to protect us when we act outside of our scope of authority. And general liability, that's going to pay out when we're legally, required to. The judge says so. So I think it's very important that we look at what are our protocols, what do we do in events, and start having some more sense of communication with that, written and otherwise. And one last thing, a lot of our insurance companies want the communities to be notified when there is a violent incident or a significant circumstances. Why? Because they want communications. They also want the homeowners to be able to prepare themselves. And one of the instances that we often see in our lawsuits is the failure to notify, or that homeowners didn't have the opportunity to protect themselves because they weren't aware of situation that was occurring. A lot of our boards like to keep that information tight because they're afraid of what people will say otherwise. So consulting with your attorney is super important on those matters.
Actually, what I did too is I'm sending a message to everybody through the chat feature if you have it. Next week, I'm not going to publicize this, but if you want to tune in, we're doing a pre-recorded on facial recognition. Hey, Tom, could you give a plug for you? You were kind enough to hook up with your buddy, John.
Yeah.
Could you just pump that up a little bit for next week? And we'll allow anybody watching now, and your friends could tune in too, but to tune in when we do this pre-recorded, what John's going to be talking about.
Yes. So John has a very unique background in the Secret Service, right? So, people think of the folks driving or standing around or walking around with our elected leaders and our president and stuff, and that is great. But there's also a cadre of technical security experts, right, that focus on the technical risks and how to mitigate those technical risks against our elected leaders. And so that's it's a similar but different skill set. And so John's an expert. He spent the great majority of his long career in this technical aspect. So he can speak to these issues like in intricate detail. And so I think your guests are going to really enjoy John's perspective, because he will really get into the weeds about the technical pieces I call him and say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z done. What do you recommend? And he's like, oh, this is it. So John's a pleasure to work with, a great guy, very funny guy. I think everyone's going to enjoy him. But John Tanney is his name, and knowledgeable. He's forgotten more about technical security than most people will ever know.
And Dawn, you're going to be there. John, you're going to be there, I see. And I'm looking forward to it because this is going to be kind of a geeky one, audience. If you want to learn everything about how this stuff works, this is the one for you to tune in. That's why I'm not actually going to publicize it, but you're welcome to tune in and be there with us and ask questions and things like that, which would be absolutely awesome. I'm going to try to ask them how you can get around this stuff, but they never want to tell us because that's always a negative. I don't know what, oh, you're back, Tom. Okay, excellent. All right. Dawn, you sent such a long email. Let me see what else you got here. Poor lighting, faulty security systems, and well, here's another question, Tom. Any security systems that you think associations should stay away from because they're more faulty and problematic than people realize?
Well, I think, I don't want to go into any particular specific example of those, but the alarm systems that I like, that I recommend for all my clients are lighting, motion activated lighting. And I know that's a very low on the technical level here, but illumination and making sure it looks like people are physically present. Most home invasions or burglaries, they do not want to encounter a homeowner, right? They want to get in. That is their profession. They want to get in. They want to get whatever things of value and assets they can get and then depart. The more likely they are to be caught or identified, or that someone is physically present to stop them, that to me is very, very beneficial. I know this is going to sound crazy, but the family dog, the family pet, I mean, that's an old truism, and it really does ring true. As far as staying away from them, I'm not a huge fan of the alarm systems that alert directly to your local law enforcement community, your local law enforcement. And I know you're thinking, oh, well, the faster we let the law enforcement know, the faster the response. The false alarm rate is like almost 100%. It's like, and I've talked to lots and lots of officers, and it's like white noise, right? I mean, yes, they're going to respond and they're going to do a good job. But when they get 30 of these to the same neighborhood, and it's kind of defeating itself, right? So I try and avoid that, and I try and have, if it's going to be an alarm, it's an audible alarm to scare away the would-be intruders. I try and avoid the ones that go direct to law enforcement right away with no vetting.
And I just sent everyone via chat the list that Dawn put together today, and she also had negligent hiring, non-existent or defective locks, no emergency protocols. I guess, Dawn, I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but that's true. You see something, your security sees something, and you don't do anything about it, you're going to have a big problem on your hands.
People do not plan. Planning is everything. And a lot of the times I heard, well, this would never happen to us, or why would we care? We're not a gated community. What does that matter to us? Well, in North Carolina, very large lawsuits going to trial against an HOA, and we'll see how that winds up, because that's going to have serious implications. It's not a gated community. And so when we were looking at all this, we have to really look in a broad stroke of what we're doing as board members and owners. What can we do to help? And I love Tom pointed out about the visuals of an alarm system and also the audible factor. And if you don't have dogs and you don't have an alarm system, plant some cactus.
People actually play really bad music here to keep unhoused people or homeless. It's true. It actually works. This is another great one, Dawn, that you sent over. And I would have never came up with this. So thank you so much. Tom, Dawn wrote unmonitored access points. I think we should talk about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's incumbent upon you to understand how people can get into your facilities, whether it's your communities, et cetera. And then what are you doing to mitigate unauthorized access? And if the answer is that you have a problem and you do nothing about it, there's that say-do gap again, right? And now you're going to have problems. And it's, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I would think that you could open yourself up to some litigation if you know you have an issue and you don't do anything about it. And then the next phase is, let's say you do know you have an issue with a gate or something like that, and you then do something and put a Band-Aid on it, or put some security theater on it, and you actually aren't doing what you say you do. Now you have another problem. So Again, it's multifaceted, and ultimately at the end of the day, if you ignoring these issues are not going to make them go away, it's just going to make it worse.
I feel like, Tom, associations should have layers of security. And I'm not talking like you're not the Pentagon. I'm not expecting you to go that far, right? But there should almost be like a control of access point if you need that. And then maybe a backup with a camera. Do you want to, am I right on that, or am I off base?
I mean, well, certainly the layers of security is a well-known process and procedure for location security. And those layers don't have to be someone standing out there. They can be as simple as, okay, you have a gate code, and then you have a camera monitoring it, and then you have maybe someone responding to the camera, and then so you can have multiple things that someone would have to get through to get to your most prized possessions, probably your people, right? And so you want to make it as hard as possible to do that with as many layers. The problem that we run into, and I think all three have mentioned this, is when you say you have these layers and you don't actually, the bad element, the criminal element are smart, right? And they're going to figure out what cameras are monitored and which are not pretty quickly.
One thing from living in an inner city environment, and look, we've never had like a horrible thing here at my building, not in any means, but we do live in an inner city. There are, I'm saying homeless people a lot because they tend to want to get in for a lot of different reasons, and not to harm people. They just want a place to camp out. But they're very good at getting in, Tom. They are very, very, very good. They, if you have a weakness, they have all day to watch your door.
Yeah.
I think people underestimate how good people could be to get in their communities.
We see this in the cyber world a lot as well. You have a lot of things on your plate. Every busy executive in cybersecurity has a calendar full of meetings all day long, and the bad guy has no meetings scheduled. They have nothing but time to poke at your systems and to find those weaknesses. And so it's the same in the physical world.
All right, let's do closing thoughts. We'll leave Tom for last. Let's go to Dawn. Dawn, closing thoughts on today's segment.
I think that litigation is really increasing with our communities in connection with the perception of safety. So every community, at least once a year, should have a meeting with their local law enforcement, not saying attorney this time, but local law enforcement, determine what are the issues in the area. Earlier, Tom mentioned crime score. We are looking at crime score from an insurance perspective. In fact, it is resulting in denying insurance for certain communities, because the higher that the crime score is, the more potential there is for vandalism and for fires and for theft. And so insurance companies are saying we're not going to play in that market. So it's important to also be active in your community to help cut down crime and to know your neighbor.
Dawn, we have to do it as a topic. You never told me that about the crime score thing. That's a big deal. I thought that was discriminatory. Also, I thought that was discriminatory, but whatever. We'll figure it out. Let's do a segment.
Not discriminatory. It's based on statistics.
All right, John.
Yeah, I like Dawn's many points today, but especially the last one. So safety, having a meeting with, I have a community that every annual meeting, they have the local police officer go, and they go over, the recent crime statistics and what's going on. But it also makes a really important point that we haven't really touched upon, is that condominiums, HOAs, they don't have any police powers. So if there is a crime being committed, you can't just complain to the board, because they're not witnesses. You have to yourself go and ask for police intervention. We spoke about a lot of security related issues, but that's also a very important one.
John, if someone's breaking into my unit right now, trust me, I'm not calling the front desk at my building. I'll be dialing 911. All right, Tom.
Some great points today. So that was great from different perspectives. I really appreciated that and made me think about it in a different way. But from access control, right? Most of the people that are in these organizations, they're not security experts, and so lean on your local law enforcement, lean on security professionals. Figure out what's out there. But whatever you do and whatever you engage with, just make sure that you're doing what you say, right? And it's better for the folks that live there, and it's also better in the event that something bad happens. You want to be prepared.
Tom, in like 15 seconds though, like relying on local law enforcement, I think you should really rely on a security consultant for the most part, right? The cops aren't there to do a full security thing on your building.
They probably won't, but they certainly can. To John's point, they can tell you, hey, these are the types of crimes we're seeing in this area, and then you can go back and try and mitigate them from there. But at least that gives you a good starting point. But yes, I mean, certainly you need a consultant that can come in that understands the community as well and understands the financial limitations and where's the line, right? Where are you going to go?
All right, and I can't wait till next week, Tom. I'm so excited that you hooked me up with him. I have so many questions.
Yeah, he's good. He's good.
All right. I want to thank everybody for being here. Tom, always great to have you back. And I always get Tom on the schedule as soon as we're done with this one. I send him an email.
And real quick, Tom, you do site assessments for condos and HOAs, right? So you will do it virtually as well as walking the premise to give people idea?
Yeah, we'll do it virtually, although it's preferable to be there in person, obviously. But yes, we'll do those assessments. And you know, a lot of the points you brought up today, Don, were really a lot of the findings we get, especially when you hire a third-party company, you know, that they don't have, that say-do gap is enormous, right? You know, we have emergency plans. What's your emergency plan? Well, I call Jeff. That's my plan. Like, that's not a plan, right? So yes. So the short answer is we'll do those types of things at Secure Environment Consultants.
We're lucky to have Tom. We really are. Tom travels all over the country. He's very much in demand. And Tom, I appreciate having you here. I appreciate John and Dawn too, but I can take advantage of them a little bit because I see them. But anyway, I appreciate everybody. Thanks, everybody. And I appreciate everybody watching. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.